little bit about what we've built out at the Kaplan Institute and share a little bit about myself. So I wanted to start this presentation by sharing a little bit about how I first experienced Illinois Tech. So I'm not an alum like most of you on the call today, and I'm also not originally from Chicago, but I joined Illinois Tech this past September, actually. But I first experienced Illinois Tech in 2014 when I was a juror for the NIAR Prize. Some of you may not be familiar with the prize. It's a $1 million research prize that was offered to Illinois Tech students, staff, and or faculty to develop breakthrough projects that could produce meaningful societal impact in just 3 years. The experience judging the competition left a profound impression on me. I got the sense that Illinois Tech was an inclusive community, so the competition was open to faculty, students, and staff. And more to the point, as I read the proposals, it became clear to me that Illinois Tech knew how to create the right conditions for innovation to flourish. Let's take one of the proposals as an example. So one of our proposals was a predictive analytics solution and intervention that could prevent crime. So I think most of you are thinking about science fiction here and maybe Minority Report, and perhaps a hammer looking for a nail, but it wasn't. As I read the proposal, I realized that they had started with a problem and had done their research. They had gone and talked to the city of Elgin's police department to really understand what was the need. And they had solved the problem in cross-disciplinary teams. So the predictive model that could predict criminal activity or the individuals committing the crime was built by Miles Wernick and Yongyi Yang, both professors in electrical and computer engineering. But a predictive analytics model on its own can't do much. You really need to have the right intervention so that the solutions can be used in the community. So they brought in Laurie Andrews, professor of law in the Chicago Kent College of Law, to help it build the legal ethical framework for developing the right intervention to go along with the solution. Now, I didn't see this type of cross-disciplinary collaboration at other academic institutions, so I was pleasantly surprised. And I walked away thinking that Illinois Tech was different and that they knew how to innovate. So now I am here. I've been here for 6 months, and we've launched an entrepreneurship program. And just last week we had an expert storyteller come in to talk to our young student entrepreneurs. And one of his first comments was, oftentimes when I speak to first-time entrepreneurs, they get right to the what. They talk about what they're doing, and they don't spend enough time really helping people understand the why you're here. And so I'm going to eat my own dog food and spend a lot of time on the whys up front in this presentation. So the first why that I'm answering here is why now? Why focus on an entrepreneurship program at Illinois Tech? Well, there couldn't be a better time. Everyone really needs to develop an entrepreneurial mindset. Scientists have to continue developing vaccines and keep up with the variants. Infectious disease scientists and public health researchers have to continue to model global pandemics and develop a safe way for us to get back to work. And Illinois Tech's faculty and students are contributing to this. So I have a picture here of Dr. Abhinav Bhushan, who's a professor in biomedical engineering. He's the recipient of a rapid award grant from the National Science Foundation, which funds research that has a severe urgency with regard to availability and access to data. So he's using the funds to understand volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, of lung cells that are infected by the COVID virus. So you could see how, if they really understand, the viral content of these VOCs and the mechanisms, you could eventually use that knowledge to develop a rapid diagnostic test for COVID-19 by just having people breathe into a device rather than even use something like saliva. So, and he's not innovating on his own. He's collaborating with Rush University Medical Center to perform the work. And he's also training students. And the students are working very closely with us at the Kaplan Institutes and are part of our entrepreneurship program. So they're not only developing the science and the research, but through our programs at the Kaplan Institute, they're actually learning how this type of diagnostic test could get to market. So we're not the only ones who think that it's time for universities to double down on entrepreneurship programs. The World Economic Forum this year has written a report about the need. So it's not just scientists that are needed, but we need a full range of academic expertise and specifically cross-disciplinary interactions that will be useful in resetting our world after we manage this virus. Given the right connections, our university engineers can contribute to the redesign of, say, safe transportation systems and workplaces. Psychologists could help us deal with all the mental health consequences of self-isolation. And we can create new, safer behaviors and rebuild trust between governments, citizens, employers, and employees. Also, the independent advice from universities can guide the ethical use of personal data for tracking and tracing people, which will have to happen now with this and future viruses. There's no shortage of challenges that require research expertise and innovation. And it's our job at universities to really train everyone to have the entrepreneurial mindset and contribute to this. So you know, again, it's not just about training people to have the entrepreneurial mindset, but it's also training everyone to work closely with industry, government, and community to innovate. That has to be a part of the equation. And this type of iterative and hands-on work, you know, requires the building of cross-disciplinary teams and that can really integrate the demands and contributions of the different stakeholders that I mentioned. So the Kaplan Institute plans to have a seat at this table and lead this effort on behalf of the university. On to our second why. So why Illinois Tech? So we know that there's a need for all universities to work on entrepreneurship programs, but why build one and at Illinois Tech? Well, for one, we have a track record of meeting the unmet needs of the moment. Let's talk about income inequality and the growing gap between the rich and the poor, one of the most important issues of our time. Well, since our founding over a century ago, Illinois Tech has walked that purpose-driven path of providing access to academic excellence to students from radically diverse backgrounds. We're a national leader in lifting students from families in the bottom 20% of the income bracket to the top 20%. So we're leaders in upward mobility in our student body. Inequality has been building for decades in the US, so it's nothing new, but the pandemic really ripped it open. And we're committing to continuing to take on this challenge. So I'm going to provide a quote to someone who's on the call, the quote of someone who's on the call today and is the chairman of the Kaplan Institute's board, Ed Kaplan. So he, like most people who support us, wants to open the door to entrepreneurship to our students and sees it as an opportunity for upwards mobility. So Ed, I hope you don't mind that I'm taking your quote, but here's your quote. So at the end of the day, you ask me who I am, and I tell you I'm just an entrepreneur. I had a father who never gave up, and I learned that from him. I never gave up. And even though there were so many opportunities, so many turns in the road, so many moments where I could have given up and failed, now you see why I'm so high on entrepreneurship. I want to be able to help kids, guys, girls. I want them to have a career in something that's good for them. I want to help them achieve what they want. I started out by putting holes in tape, and look at me now. And for those of you who are not familiar with Ed Kaplan, he's the founder of Zebra Technologies, barcode technology, and has done incredibly well for himself and is now supporting entrepreneurial efforts at Illinois Tech and really beyond. We're really lucky to have him here. There's never been a time where all stakeholders have been aligned on this higher purpose at Illinois Tech and in the market. And really, frankly, we have a sense of urgency. And for the last why am I here? Well, for one, I have a tech background. So I have a Bachelor of Science in Computer Engineering from Brown and a PhD in Computational Neuroscience from the University of Chicago. So I like to work with technology. I've also worked in tech startups. My first startup was Cyberkinetics Neurotechnology Systems, which was a spin out from Brown. And there we developed a brain implant technology that aimed to restore movement in paralyzed people. And our tagline was turning thought into action, a tagline that I think also applies to how we like to do things at Illinois Tech. I have an affinity to the student body. So like many students at Illinois Tech, I first came to the US on a student visa from another country, looking for opportunity. I didn't come from very far. I came from Montreal, Canada, so not as distant a culture as some of our students. But my family is originally from Iran, and we were all immigrants in Canada. I think I was about 2 or 3 when we fled the country, and it was a rough trajectory to get to Canada. Once we landed in Canada, my father was unable to speak French. You know, he could speak a little English and some Farsi. And he had an electrical engineering degree, but you know, it wasn't really accepted in Canada. So he had to go back to school. And even after getting his bachelor's degree, he realized that without a network, you know, he could probably do better launching his own company than he could working for an existing one. And so he did. So, you know, he was an entrepreneur, and I got to see him go through that. And many of my family members are entrepreneurs now. I'm a community builder, and I have a passion for startups. I was part of the launch team at Matter, so Chicago's health technology incubator. And there I was a VP of programs. So I supported hundreds of startups that found meaningful, and I found meaningful ways to connect them with their customers. You know, most healthcare companies are B2B. And so customers are usually not patients. So they're health systems, retail pharmacies, health insurance companies, and even others. And many of our entrepreneurs, you know, really as a 2 to 5 person company, getting in front of a giant, colossal health system, since there's more consolidation in the market these days, that's tough. It's hard. It's tough to get their attention. And having a mediator really make those meaningful connections and vouch for the startup really increases the likelihood of their success. I really enjoyed doing that, and you know, consider myself a bridge builder. A way that I put that bridge building affinity to use was during my time at Machinify. So Machinify is a VC-backed Silicon Valley startup that I just worked with before coming here at the Kaplan Institute. And the team was very tech savvy. Their last company was Voodoo, a video streaming company. But no one on the team had any connections in healthcare. And so they brought me in, and I helped them enter the health insurance market and helped them use AI to automate the healthcare payment cycle in health insurance companies. I'm fearless. I really like to work on the big ideas, and I understand that they may fail, and I have no trouble getting up again. I still want to take the risk. I'm also a nonlinear thinker. I'm an artist and an engineer. One of the reasons why I went to Brown, because RISD was right next door, and I was able to take painting classes there. And no, this is not my painting, but I do enjoy it. And you know, I think a nonlinear thinker. When I think about you know, our alums, one quote comes to mind by Marty Cooper, who is also an IIT alum and an inventor and the inventor of the cell phone. So he likes to say the best way to think out of the box is not to create a box to begin with. So that kind of makes sense to me. So all of this said, I'm very action oriented. And I'm driven by opportunities where I can have an impact. And that's why I'm here. I sense that I can add a lot of value and meet the needs of the moment. So to summarize all of that, I'm a builder. I'm a pioneer and a startup maven. I'm a bridge builder. I'm an artist and an engineer. I'm a problem solver. I'm a risk taker. And I have a bias towards action and impact. And with all of that, I feel like there's a strong cultural fit with Illinois Tech and what we're building at the Kaplan Institute. And now that I'm done with my whys, we can start talking a little bit about the what. So I think the power of plus summarizes what we do in a very clever way. So we build bridges between disciplines and sectors so that we can exponentially amplify the impact of our work. Our goal is to become the focal point in enabling Illinois Tech and Chicago to rise to meet the mandate and opportunity of this moment. And we've talked about why entrepreneurship and gaining the entrepreneurial mindset is so important right now. So how do we do it? Let's dig into the what. So first, we build a bridge between students and entrepreneurship. We are committed to developing the entrepreneurial mindset in everyone, and we do so through a course called Ipro. The World Economic Forum couldn't have stated more clearly, university entrepreneurship programs must step up and take this responsibility, and we're already committed to doing it. So every IIT graduate graduates with the entrepreneurial mindset. So our program focuses on 3 elements. Oftentimes when we talk about the entrepreneurial mindset, people have different perceptions of what that means. So I felt it's important to spend a little bit of time discussing what is the mindset from our perspective. And frankly, if you have strong opinions about points that are missing, I'd love to hear from you at the end of this talk. So first off, one of the core elements is market consciousness. Entrepreneurs know who will want, need, and use their solutions. They're very customer focused. And the tools we use to teach that, that customer mindset is value proposition design, customer profiling, and market validation. Next, in terms of a big element, it's practical conviction. And I don't think I'm going to get a lot of pushback here. So entrepreneurs are relentlessly driven to make positive change, get up when knocked down, but also make trade-offs to ensure progress and action. So, you have those, you have to report to your board on a quarterly basis, and you want to make sure that you're moving ahead. They're judging you on your performance. So you want to make sure you're moving. And the tools that we use to teach those concepts is, for one, our students have to report on their progress while they take their course. They have to reflect on their actions. They have to map their journeys, and they have to share what they learned from their failures at the end of their courses. Finally, asset magnetism. So our last element is asset magnetism. Entrepreneurs have this really unique ability to continuously attract and create networks to help with thinking, building, recruiting, and marketing. So every aspect, if you think about it, you're, startup, you've got one person, 2 people on your team, and you want to change the world. And somehow every person that you meet, you have to compel them to follow you and work with you. And, that's an essential tool that you need to have in your toolbox if you want to gain the entrepreneurial mindset. So our students are not just taught what goes into a pitch deck, so that is the communication tool when you first get started, your executive summary, your 1-pager, your pitch deck, and you go out and try to sell. We tell them and we teach them about all the components that are in there because that's important. You have to have those. But we also help them tell their story in a compelling manner and align their startup's goals with their values, because it really starts with, with what are your values and how are those instilled in your startup. I'm going to spend a minute here talking about how our program is differentiated. There are a lot of entrepreneurship programs out there. And I'd say that we're aiming to have an inclusive program. So like I said, we really make the program accessible, the general program accessible to all students. And actually it's more than just accessible, we make it a requirement. So we're really kind of putting our foot down and saying everybody needs to graduate with this entrepreneurial mindset. And then second, for those who really want to experience entrepreneurship and test drive their own ideas, we give them tailored support from a highly curated list of industry and faculty mentors. And I'll speak more about, I'll give an example in a minute. So the impact is that students gain a life skill and the entrepreneurial mindset. So here's an example of how we bridge students and entrepreneurship. This is a team. Ayers Farms is a startup that was launched by a law student at the Chicago Kent College of Law. Her name is Ashley Marie Sutherland. This past summer, her and her husband, Jossie, realized how easy it is to find land on the South Side and grow vegetables, enough to feed a family or two. And they're taking that success and building a company to revitalize underused urban plots on the South Side with urban farming, with the goal of building a healthier community within the African diaspora. So they picked crops that are relevant to their community, and they're building a system that really educates the community about healthy eating and equips them with the right tools and services to bring this idea to life. But there's a long road ahead to get from their small pilot this summer, to a full-blown business. So luckily, one of our alums stepped in. His name is Corbett Cool, and he's currently CEO of Tillable, which is a marketplace for renting farmland. So we also have an urban farming expert among our teaching faculty. His name is Blake Davis. He's their faculty mentor. So both of them are meeting Ashley Marie and Jossie every week to give them feedback on how they can get traction, how they build their business model. And we connect with them on a regular basis as well. So with these two experts on board as their advisors, they've just gained a significant amount of know-how and will undoubtedly avoid many landmines as they build their business. And so here you have a quote from Corbett, who that we picked up for a story that we did on him earlier this year. So he says, "I'm trying to leverage my experience in starting companies to make it more real for these entrepreneurs and to give them real world anecdotes about what we've seen and what's worked in the past." But he's doing a lot more than that, actually. You know, when I speak to him, he has ideas, you know, and he's like, well, you know, they should really consider, you know, partnering up with this company. And then it's not just advice. He actually has the network as well. So it's easy for him to connect the students with the right people to really get the business moving. So students don't just gain the entrepreneurial mindset by launching businesses and test driving their own business ideas. A number of other options that teach the same principles are also available. So for example, we have a new academic director at the Kaplan Institute. His name is Mahesh Krishnamurti, and he's also faculty at the Armour College of Engineering. And so he teaches students about entrepreneurship through a national electric vehicle design competition with the Society of Automotive Engineers. And in this program, they form 6 sub-teams to raise money, design, engineer, manufacture, and project manage their vehicles, and hopefully win the competition. Last year, they won 4th place for engineering design. So I debated whether I should show you a video, and I didn't include it in here, but now I'm thinking it might have been nice to show you these vehicles moving along the racetrack. Okay, let's move on to the next one. So university and community. That's the other big place where we want to have an impact. So we build a bridge between the university and the community in Chicago, with a special focus on Bronzeville. This year, this past year, so many small businesses have suffered catastrophic losses as their services and offerings came to a halt. And so we thought about this, and we're like, well, we want to contribute and we want to help out in some way. And so through Ipro, we created a course called Ipro Labs Community. And through our community affairs office, we found small businesses in our community who were looking to build new sustainable revenue streams by means of creating new products or services. And our students are working closely with them to develop those solutions. So one of our faculty for this program is an individual called Bo Rhoda. And here he gives you some insight as to why this is working as well as it is. So I sat in on some of these classes and I'm impressed. The students are incredibly engaged and doing really, really great work. And it's just surprising because we're in the COVID era, and you know, we're all talking to each other on screens. And I'm just so impressed at what's happening. So Bo says our students generationally are different than many of their predecessors, and they're looking for projects that have a lot of meaning, that have some kind of impact and that align with their values. So what better way to do that than to take a small business that's really hurting right now and use a course to really figure out how innovation could help them out. Here's an example of an Ipro project from the spring. So Cliff Rome is the owner of the Parkway Ballroom. So the Parkway Ballroom is a well-known event space in Bronzeville that has a really rich history. For obvious reasons, it hasn't generated much business since COVID hit. And our students are working with Cliff this spring to reimagine and repurpose the Parkway Ballroom into a place where the arts, work, technology, play, and community intersect. And our students are thrilled to work with him. They can see the impact of their ideas, and they can see the fact that it's not just a problem for the Parkway Ballroom, but whatever solutions they build probably has the propensity to generalize to other small businesses or other event spaces. It also turns out that we have a significant gamer community at Illinois Tech, and they happen to be our students. And so they're coming up with some interesting gaming related use cases for the Parkway Ballroom. Also kind of in parallel, Illinois Tech has been working with a number of other stakeholders in the city, and they've hatched a plan to develop a $30 million gaming arena hub called Surge, just a few blocks away from Illinois Tech. So I'm assuming that whatever they build here could be a hub to this arena. And here's a quote from Cliff Rome, who's expressing his satisfaction with the experience only a few months into it. Working with our Illinois Tech students has created an irreversible positive relationship. Academic institutions blend into the community, and this becomes a narrative of the neighborhood. Going back to our pluses, next up we have design and technology. Another source of amplification is tied to our ability to connect design and technology. We share a building, the Kaplan Institute, with a world-renowned Institute of Design, and we leverage the talent there to develop and teach innovation and entrepreneurship to all the students at Illinois Tech. Design frameworks are incredibly useful for innovation, and they really help create a common language across disciplines, and they lead to more solutions that actually address a market need. And some of the principles that the Institute of Design teaches really supports representative innovation, where we're able to work closely with the communities that will end up using the products in designing the products themselves and the services. So technology without design could really turn into a hammer looking for a nail. And we leverage ID subject matter expertise primarily through Ipro, the Ipro course today, which has been taught by a design faculty member for the past 7 years. We've also recruited graduate level design students to lead the teams in Ipro. We're calling them Kaplan Fellows, and they'll be involved in our membership program, which is our entrepreneurship program at Kaplan. So while I've only been here for 6 months, the benefits of exposing your students to design frameworks is not really hard to see. As an example of how design and technology, when added together, create exponential impact, I'm going to share one of our alums companies. So not ours. The company is called Fent. The founder is a gentleman called David Edwards, an expert in respiratory health. I think it's a great example of how design and technology, or design and science, were brought together. So designers always know to start with a need, and his company, and I'll describe his product in a minute, really did start with a need. So the need was, the COVID viruses, all kinds of viruses, but also COVID, need to be kept out of the lungs. And when they do get in, to prevent others from being infected, we should keep them from coming back out. And so the science behind this is actually quite simple. It's the fact that something as simple as saline solution, like a saline, just salt water with some calcium enrichment, can cleanse your airway and increase your mucus, thereby catching viruses on their way in or out. It's pretty simple. And if you think about it, I'm sure your grandparents spent a lot of time, gargling hot salt water in their throats, or at least mine did. Problem is that not a lot of people do that today, and they don't think to do it to really kind of have the impact that it can have. So the ingenuity here is in designing a product that makes use of that science and that increases adoption, right? That actually creates a product that people will use. So David's team has designed a beautiful and ergonomic product that allows individuals to inhale a mist like spray that does the job. So even a cursory look at their website could show you that they've done a lot of customer research. So you can see that they have a use case, or they describe how their product might be useful for the workplace, for the environments that are most in need of something like this, the workplace and schools. So we too at Illinois Tech have the potential to create such products and services. And we're going to achieve that potential by encouraging our design community to work more closely with our engineering and scientific community. We plan to encourage this cross-pollination, and we're well equipped to do so. So we have strong relationships with the new Dean of Engineering, Ken Christensen, and the new Dean of the College of Computing, Lance Fortnow. And of course, we have our existing collaboration with the Institute of Design and its Dean, Dennis Weil. So between all of us, we should be able to pull this off. And of course, we'll get business and legal support to round things out from the other colleges. Finally, last but not least, we have university and industry. So we really do want to create closer ties between university and industry. The benefits are undeniable. And in fact, much of the government research funding agencies like the National Science Foundation are requiring researchers to create closer ties to industry these days to maximize the impact of their funding dollars and make sure that it actually gets to market. No one innovates in a vacuum anymore. So a tight connection with industry will lead to more research getting into the hands of stakeholders who can actually benefit from the insights. And what we do at the Kaplan Institute is really learn about faculty research and opportunities for students to work with them to advance their assets, and then find meaningful ways to bring industry in to really help with this process. Right, so we do it in many different ways, and I'll describe one example in a minute. But essentially, the impact is that students learn about problems that are relevant to industry. So really getting ready for that career, and really understanding kind of what problems are in the market. They also get practical experience solving real-world problems, and finally, the industry partners and the faculty members who are engaged gain insights on their strategic priorities without too much of an opportunity cost, because the students are really the drivers here. So one of the ways that we're creating a tighter collaboration with industry is by reframing our Ipro program. So this spring, we created 5 verticals for Ipro Labs, and we're recruiting industry partners for each vertical. So for example, we'll focus on the energy lab here. So for the energy lab, we're working with Sargent and Lundy, a longtime recruiter of Illinois Tech talent. And we worked with them to frame the problem for the course. And the problem was, how might we delve into the production, storage, and delivery of hydrogen to affect large-scale power generation? Before the students approached the problem, we had Hamid Arastapur, who is the Dean of the Wenger Institute for Sustainable Energy Research and longtime chemical engineering faculty, to describe the promise and the challenges of using hydrogen as an energy carrier. An example of a student project that came out of this effort is a mathematical model of a hydrogen supply chain that weighs the costs and the environmental impact of different solutions. They built their first models like just recently, And they pitched them. I was actually on the call where the students created videos that they of their presentations and their models to get feedback from the industry partner. And so we had three people from Sargent Lundy, two that are alums of IIT, look at all of these videos and provide feedback. So you could see two things from this experience. One, you could see why you'd need a cross-disciplinary team to really pull this off. So chemical engineers to understand the complexity of working in the sector, data scientists to build a mathematical model, and then business students to really do not just the project management, but the financial assessment, the financial impact of the solutions. And then not to mention the value of having industry advisors involved. The staff from Sargent and Lundy did a fantastic job at helping these students test their assumptions and come up with a better solution. All right, so to summarize it, we believe in the power of plus. So by building bridges between disciplines and sectors, we're exponentially amplifying the impact of our work across the institution. By pairing up students with entrepreneurship, our students gain an entrepreneurial mindset and can address the big challenges that the world is putting in front of us right now. By pairing university with community, we form collaborations with small business owners in the community, and we support economic development in historically excluded communities that are in our backyard. By mixing design and technology, we build more tech solutions that address a need and have a societal impact. And finally, by really bringing industry experts to work more closely with us at the university, we receive more commercial guidance on research projects, and we connect our talent to industry. And now, by having shared the what of the Kaplan Institute, you could see why we're well suited to achieve our mission vision. So our vision is to have every student graduate with an entrepreneurial mindset, and should they be inclined to, experience entrepreneurship while they're at Illinois Tech. And our mission is, we'll know that we have succeeded when a large number of alums have become new tech leaders in Chicago and beyond. So before moving on to the questions, I wanted to walk you through a typical student journey. While this map focuses on the experience of an undergraduate student, we do plan on developing these programs for graduate students as well. So let's start with the freshman year. For students from underrepresented groups, we've identified that exposing them to our programs and staff and faculty early can really increase the likelihood of trying us later on and trying entrepreneurship. My husband is actually a first gen college student, and he's come a long way. He's now a professor and has done quite well for himself. And he always says that the thing that matters the most is exposure. When you don't see what the options are, you don't even know that there are options for you. And so we take that to heart, and we find ways to connect with the students from underrepresented groups as early as we can. And in fact, we even have programs that are reaching out to high schools. So their freshman year, the student would actually learn about Ipro through a partnership that we have with the Elevate program. And we talk about what entrepreneurship is and what their experience might look like. So it's really just mostly talk. There's very little experiential components. That's really exposing the students to what this could be like. Maybe they'll talk to a few student entrepreneurs that are, juniors or seniors. Their sophomore year, they might take an Ipro lab and work with a community partner. They could also engage in our startup immersion program. So we're finding meaningful ways to have our students intern for local startups. And just because it's easier locally this year, we might stretch out and kind of work across the nation soon, but we're starting locally and really learn, what are the types of jobs in a startup, and what does it feel to wear many hats and not have, not have a lot of resources and try to deliver and work with as many customers as you can bring in. Their junior year, once they've had some experience interning for a startup, they might start getting interested enough in entrepreneurship that they'd like to experience it for themselves. And they'd like to feel what it's like to take their own idea and launch a company. And why not try to do that while they're still in school, while they kind of have that safety net. So their junior year, they might take a membership program and test drive their own business idea. Another option that we want to make available for them is one where they learn a little bit more about startup investing. And we think that has a lot of value for them as well. So we're building a student-led investment group that could really do some due diligence on some of our own startups. And our students could really kind of participate in that effort. And finally, their senior year, our students could actually have a business that's ready for a business plan competition. And so our students would apply to pitch at Illinois Tech, our business plan competition, which is running on June 11th this year, and will continue to run every year. And then if they win, they might spend the summer at the Kaplan Institute building their business. And frankly, in some cases, they might choose to stick around and get their master's in tech entrepreneurship. So pursue a coterminal master's degree and really learn a little bit more about entrepreneurship while advancing their own business, while still kind of incubating at Illinois Tech. So that's the story in a nutshell. I hope, I hope you've enjoyed the presentation and have a good sense of what we're building out at the Kaplan Institute. And I'd love to get your insights and hear your questions.
Thank you so much, Maryam. We have a whole bunch of questions that have been coming in. So if anyone else listening has questions, and I'm sure plenty of you still do, please type them in the chat box, and we will do our best to get them answered in the next 15 minutes. So the first question we have is from Yale, and they ask, how can we connect students through Kaplan to engage with a startup company's project?
You mean students at Illinois Tech?
Yes, and I believe this question is coming from an alum, and they're asking how could Illinois Tech students who are already part of Kaplan be engaged to work in an outside startup company project?
That's what our startup immersion program is all about. So, I have. So, for example, I just met with the leaders of all the innovation hubs in Chicago, and through them, we have access to all the startups in Chicago. And we started piloting a program where we want to help our students land summer internships with local startups. And so we're on our way to doing this, and there's, the trick is to really reduce the friction. As you all know, startups are racing and wearing many hats. And generally speaking, when you talk to them about taking on an undergraduate intern, they shy away because they don't have time to train and manage someone. So we're in the midst of having conversations with startups and figuring out, well, how could we make it easier on you? And how do we create a program where we can train our students and have them have a feel for what it's like to be in a startup, but don't burden you too much with the managerial duties. So we're in pilot phase right now, but students can come to us. In fact, if you know any who are interested, please send them my way, and we'll include them in our pipeline.
Thank you. And so a sort of related question is from Chuck. He asked, how can talented alumni get involved with your program? So if you don't mind, I'm going to quickly interject for Chuck. If you're an alum and you're interested in getting involved in Kaplan or any other areas of the university, you can always reach out to myself or to our office at alumni@iit.edu. And we are certainly happy to find volunteer opportunities from sort of any area of the university for alumni. But I will let Maryam speak specifically about how alumni can get involved with Kaplan.
yeah, that's we want alumni to be engaged, and there are different ways of being engaged. So, like I said, we have several alums at Sargent Lundy, and all of these industry partners that are coming to us. Typically, they go and find IIT alums to be a part of the working group because they're going to be really engaged, and they're going to want to work with the students on these innovative projects. So if you're lucky enough to work for a company that is in our roster of industry partners, and there's a really straightforward way that we can get you involved. And separately, if you're more of an entrepreneur and or have some entrepreneurial experience, well, we do bring alums in as mentors for our startups. So you'd have to be willing to commit to working with them on a weekly basis. But the way that we structured it today, every alum that we brought in was matched with a student team working on their area of expertise. So you might remember I mentioned Corbett Cool from Tillable, who's working with Ayers Farms. So that's just one example, but it's a highly curated and tailored pairing. So it's working out really well. So if we find a good match for your skill set, I highly recommend participating.
Wonderful. Thank you. And um, Harley has a question. I see a lot of emphasis on the science and engineering for projects, but not as much emphasis on the business side of entrepreneurship. Is developing a return on investment or some other business measure part of the entrepreneurship program?
Oh my gosh, thank you for mentioning that. Yes, absolutely. So we're spending a lot of time, and frankly, I don't think finance and projections, ROI. I mean, they're really simple equations, right? That are easily taught to an engineer, but it's not really. It wasn't part of the formal curriculum. And it is now, though. So we teach our students all of these frameworks to really assess, the market size and return on investment if they're raising money, and have to go in front of investors. How do they tell them that, how do they share their sales projections and show that in X number of years they're going to provide enough of a return on their initial investment. So we do walk through all of that with them, yeah, but it's a new component. And by the way, we have there is the Stewart School of Business here, and so we are working very closely with Nick Rokop there, who has taught entrepreneurship for years and years. The other piece where it comes in is we have another course that Nick runs that really aims to almost perform due diligence on startup or research assets that want to be commercialized. And in that course, he teaches, he has the students kind of create a risk scorecard that really requires some financial analysis. So they'll do calculations of unit economics and lots of other things in that process.
And Joe Higgs says, quite a long question. Good to see you again, Joe. We are so happy to have you back joining us for this. So Joe has a question and kind of some observations. The Kaplan Center has opportunities to support efforts driven by student interest that don't necessarily fit into science areas. And he has science in quotation marks. So the world of athletics and sports is global and could be touched by virtually every academic sector. Working in that world would open up to new areas of connection to the university and exposure to what STEAM students could do. Could you speak to that a little bit if there's any sort of...
Did he say sports?
Yes.
Sports. Okay. Yes. Well, that's interesting that you brought it up. So there are some stakeholders that we're working with on an idea that they're, for the moment, they're calling the Center for Sports Innovation. And it really does require, cross-disciplinary activities to pull off what's needed. So athletes occasionally suffer from traumatic brain injuries. And so there's lots of healthcare technologies that are relevant for diagnosis and treating at the point of the incident. There's, we have a student team of athletes right now who are who have a company called Beyond the Soul, where they're helping athletes who have foot injuries recover a little bit more quickly by having sensors in the soles really monitor their gait and send that information back to their physical therapists. There's sports innovation. I mean, you could even go into like retail, like designing different types of clothing, and really, you're right. It's a rich sector for innovation, and so I'm fully supportive. We're also thinking about how we can innovate in the gaming sector, so esports sector. Frankly, because we have such a large number of students who are interested in this area, and so we want to leverage that interest and help them innovate in the sector. Does that answer your question?
I believe it does. And Joe said as well, thank you for this presentation. Then also thank you to Ed Kaplan, who I think is still on the call. So if anyone else has any final questions, it looks like we just have one last one. What projects or opportunities have you worked on that you've found have the most surprising results?
Oh, that's a good question. I think so. Let me say that I've only been here for 6 months, so I'd like to shelve that and answer it when I've been here for a little bit longer. So we've launched a lot of pilots and are collecting results right now, and so I think it's a bit early to have I haven't had a chance to have to deeply reflect on what we've launched to date and come up with a meaningful response to that. So I'm gonna take a rain check on that one. Get back to you.
Well, I know we're running short on time, but I think we'll give the final question to Sandro. He asked, do you have to be local to Chicago to be involved in mentoring and advising? And then also, do you have a need for energy advisors or mentors? So in the energy industry.
Yes, because we have the Ipro Labs Energy project. So yes, absolutely. And frankly, it's an area of strength for the university. So I can't imagine that we won't build up our programming in that area. So yes, absolutely. And the first question was, how can we get involved if we're in the Chicago area?
I think he was asking if he's not in the Chicago area.
Oh, I see. You know what? We're not really, at least for now, we're not really limited to Chicago mentors, primarily because everything is done virtually anyway. We're slowly getting vaccinated, but we've also gotten used to interacting on video. So I don't think we'd be opposed to working with you, even if you weren't. And in fact, if I remember, several of our mentors are not local. So we have Arun Prakash, who's in Austin, Texas, and he's one of our entrepreneur mentors for the membership program.
Well, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. And we've gotten so many comments saying thank you and how many of our alumni have enjoyed this presentation. So just a reminder for everyone that this will be recorded and will be on iit.edu/alumni university in the next several weeks. Our next presentation will be in April. Phil Troik will be presenting some interesting work in vision engineering. So we hope everyone can join us for that. The full schedule is also on our website. So thank you again, Maryam. This has been absolutely wonderful.
You're welcome. Thank you, everyone.